Dr. David Moe is Henry Rice Postdoctoral Associate in Southeast Asian Studies at Yale University. At Yale, he teaches some courses on religion, conflict, and reconciliation in Southeast Asia and colonialism, nationalism, and identity in Myanmar. He is the author of one book, over 70 scholarly articles, and is currently working on a book project about the politics of Buddhist nationalism, ethnic conflict, and reconciliation in Southeast Asia. The goal of his scholarship is to engage with three different communities: grassroots church, academy, and public society. He is a public featured speaker about Myanmar at Yale, Harvard, Columbia, Brown, Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge, BU, Boston College, NYU, George Washington University, Eastern Kentucky University, Toronto, Australian National University, Whitley College, Hamburg, National University of Singapore, Chinese University of Hong Kong, Yonsei, Awa, and some ecclesial and public settings. He's on the editorial team of four journals: International Journal of Public Theology, Journal of Southeast Asian Movement at Yale, Interreligious Studies and Intercultural Theology, and the Asian American Theological Forum. Let us welcome Dr. David Moe. The floor is yours, Dr. Moe.
All right, friends. Good morning to some of you, and good evening to some of you, depending on where you are. Thank you so much, Dr. David Chow and Dr. Easton Law, for the invitations to speak at this conference, and I'm deeply honored. So, the topic of my presentation will be the hidden stories of Burmese American Christianity (BAC). So, understanding the imaginations of identities. It's important to see when and how the people from Myanmar migrated to the United States. We can look at three waves of the Burmese immigrations to the United States. The first wave of immigrants began right after the first coup in 1962. So when the first coup took power, so a number of Burmese people migrated to the United States. And then the second wave of immigrants happened right after the national uprisings in 1988. So during this second wave of immigrants, there are a couple of the Burma ethnic majority groups as well as some ethnic minority groups migrate to the United States. And 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 then we can see the third wave of immigrants happened in the early 2000 and up to now. In this third movement, we can see the significant number of ethnic minority groups such as Chin, Kachin, and Karen migrated to the United States. So that is the background of how people in Myanmar migrated to the United States. And so now let us see when they migrate to the United States, and we can ask what might be the population of Burmese American Christians in the US, and then why do they leave? So that might be interesting for us to understand. I asked a number of people, especially people at the Burmese American Community Institute located in Indianapolis. I asked them what might be the population of Burmese American here in the US, and they said there could be around 400,000 people. That is a great number, actually. And then where do they live? Mostly the current ethnic minority lives in Indianapolis. A great number of these current people. We worshiped together when I was there for 2 years, and I met a lot of these current people. And if you look at the Chin ethnic minority groups, many of them live in Indianapolis. So a great number of Chin live in Indianapolis. That's why we call it Chindianapolis now. So many Chin people live there. And then a great number of some Zomi people will be in Oklahoma and Tulsa, that areas. And then they are spreading in other parts of the state, such as in Texas and Maryland and other parts of this U.S. So this is the area where these ethnic minority live today. And also, these Burmese American Christians are minorities of the minority, let me put this way. As we have heard from Dr. Jen Hong earlier, so these Asian American communities are the minorities, but these Burmese Christians are minorities of the minorities. And their voices are not widely heard in the academic conversations, and their stories are also hidden. So we cannot, I mean, we don't really reflect on their voices in the Asian American theological construction. So we really need to put their voices from now on. So that's why I call it their hidden stories. Their voices, their stories are not widely heard. They are hidden. Um, and the next step is that is the crucial point of our conversation today here. How do they imagine their identity? It's very interesting. Some 40 years ago, a famous Southeast Asian scholar, Benedict Anderson, created the terminology "imagined communities." Um, this was created in 1983, so exactly 40 years ago. So he created this terminology to understand how the ethnic majority groups in Southeast Asia imagined nationalisms. Um, so Benedict Anderson referred this terminology to the ethnic majority groups in Southeast Asia. The Burma Buddhists in Myanmar, and a Muslim majority group in Indonesia, and other ethnic majority groups. The way how they imagine communities. But the question here is, do the ethnic minority also imagine their community? Absolutely, yes. They imagine their communities in a different way. So the question is, how do they imagine their identity? Particularly, my interest is, how do they share a united or conflictual imaginations? And then how does ethnicity shape their ecclesial identity? This is very crucial for the people of Myanmar here in the US. Ethnicity and then the ecclesial identity are really related. Um, so if you look at Chin, Kachin, and Kachin, denominationally speaking, a lot of people are Baptists. And if you look at some other parts of Chin, you also see Presbyterians. That is where I belong to. Presbyterian is a very minority group among this Chin ethnic group. So how do they imagine their ecclesial identities through the lens of ethnicity is very important for them. And then, when they arrived here in the US, they formed the inter-ethnic Christian community, Chin and Karen, and then Kachin and maybe Lisu and other ethnic minority group from different denominations. They formed inter-ethnic Christian community, and then they worship together. After a few years, they split into what we may call intra-ethnic church from inter-ethnic church, right? So this is something very interesting. And I asked them, why do you split into the intra-ethnic church rather than inter-ethnic Christian community? And they give several answers. Um, there might be some root cause of why they split into many ethnic identity-based church. Some people will say because we want to worship in our own dialects. So when they come here and they just name the church Myanmar Christian Community, but after a few years they will call it Chin Church, or maybe Korean, or maybe Zomi, or maybe Lisu, or so they use the name of the church um, uh, um, through the lens of their ethnic group. And this is one example where I worship for 6 years. And so let me use this as a case study. Kentucky Myanmar Christian Church. I was not necessarily a pastor of this church when I was there, but I often went there and preached, and I met a number of church members. So let me use this as a case study. When they came to the Kentucky, they just formed this church, Kentucky Myanmar Christian Church, which embraced people from different ethnic groups. But after a few years, they just split into Fakar Baptist Church and Falam Baptist Church and Zomi. And then finally, my own people, my hometown people, they just formed it, Yayon Cho Baptist Church. So this is very interesting story about this Burmese migrant Christian community in the US. This might not be common among, I think, Korean or Chinese or any other Asian American churches, because I used to be a pastor for 6 years in the Korean church, and of course they have some other issue, but they don't have this kind of common issue. But this is the common issue for the Burmese American Christian community here in the U.S. Um, and then the next is their ethnic and ecclesial identity. When they put this together, we have to ask the questions. is reverse missions a reality or rhetoric? In the World Christianity Conference, we often say that so now mission is reversed because in the past, some missionaries from the West came to our countries and they brought the gospel. Of course, they did not bring God. God has already been there. They just brought the gospels, and they were the missionary to non-Western countries. But now we came to the West, and we are a reverse missionary. So this is how we often bring the reverse missions in the World Christianity Conference today. My question here is reverse missions a reality or just a rhetoric? I think I want to use the Burmese Christian community as a case study. For me, this is not 100% a reality because they don't really reach out to other people. Like, for example, they did not reach much to the white people here in the US. This is the Burmese American Christian community. They just gather in their own community with the same ethnic community. They did not really reach out to other ethnic and other people from other countries. And so I'm not sure whether this really is a reverse mission. So the way they imagine their community is confined to their own ethnic group. So I'm not 100% sure that reverse mission is a reality. It seems to be a rhetoric. But in other way, it could also be reality, but it's not 100% a reality in my view. And also the second question we have to ask here is, do the Burmese American Christians have a strong sense of belonging to the US? I think this depends on the generations, older generations and younger generations. Whenever I met them in different parts, whenever I visit them, and I ask them, do you really believe that this is your home? I think more older generations will believe that this is not really their home. They just miss their home back in Myanmar. But this younger generation, those who were born here, or maybe at least those who grew up here in this country, they believe that this is their home. But their fathers and their mothers, they believe that their home is not just in these countries. So they believe that their home is back in Myanmar. I think this also makes sense, especially in the current situations in Myanmar, because their relatives and their some of their families, and they are still suffering under the coup, and they feel that their heart and their mind and everything is still back in Myanmar. Although these younger people, they have a stronger sense of belonging to this country. So this is also very interesting for the future of research. The generation gap, how the younger people have a stronger sense of belonging to this country, and they don't care so much about their home country back in Myanmar. But the older generation have a stronger sense of belonging to Myanmar rather than to these countries. So if you can see here, there are some pictures. The first picture is this is Chin Baptist Church. This is from Indianapolis. As I said earlier, Indianapolis is the place where the majority of Chin people live. That's why we call Indianapolis. And then the second picture is this is the Kachin Baptist Church. And then this is the third is Kachin Baptist Church. And then this is Lisu, and Lisu is the ethnic minority groups within this Kachin. So some Kachin people will say Lisu are part of Kachin, but this Lisu will say, no, we are not part of Kachin. We are the Lisu, we are not Kachin. So this kind of things has been happening among these ethnic minority groups. And then this picture is from the church where I used to attend in Kentucky. This is my own people, my hometown people. And so this is the picture, Cho Yayan Baptist Church in Kentucky. So these are just a few examples of how the ethnic diversity has been significant for the ethnic identity imagination of these Burmese American Christianity. There are a lot of pictures like Yomi and other ethnic groups included. But in this picture, I just show this a few pictures for the example. And then the next is to understand the religious imaginations of politics, particularly this American politics, of course. So how do they relate their faith to American politics? A number of people I met and I asked them, the way they relate their faith to American politics, in my observation, has more to do with party politics than national politics in my observations. Um, of course, not all of them. The majority of them are strongly Republicans. That's not surprising. I think this happens to I think many other Asian American too, I believe. And then recent years, many of them are strong supporter of Trump, definitely. So this is how they relate their faith to American politics, and they are contradictory in my observations, to the understanding of these politics here in the US as well as back in Myanmar. So many of these ethnic minority, Chin, Kachin, and Karen, and other smaller ethnic minorities groups, they really hate Buddhist nationalisms in Myanmar because they are ethnic minority group and they face persecutions and discrimination. They really hate Buddhist nationalisms in Myanmar. But when they come here, they really love Christian nationalisms. So for them, Christian nationalism doesn't have any problem at all. They say Christian nationalism is a good thing because this country was built on the Christian principle. This is how they believe. I asked them why you think Buddhist nationalism is a problem in Myanmar, but Christian nationalism is the good thing here. But they say this country was built on the Christian principle. That's why we need to make this country as a Christian nation. This is how they respond to my questions. They really believe that Christian nationalism is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. So in that case, we can also say that how they really relate their faith to this American flag, right? So this is something interestingly among this Burmese American Christian community here in the U.S. Um, and the next slide is here. Let me quickly go so that we have more discussions. One might be the future of this Burmese American Christianity. Um, there are a lot of observations. As I shared with you earlier, when they came here, they just formed inter-ethnic um, Burmese Christian community. You know, Chin, Kachin, Karen, Lisu, and other ethnic groups. They worship together in the one church. But a few years later, they split into intra uh, ethnic church. Like Chin are different, and then Kachin, and so they cannot really get back together in the same church. So based on this, whether we should have a visions of this in multi-ethnic church again, um, I asked some pastors and some church leaders, and they believe that that is important, but they also believe that that is not possible because they feel that they just want to worship in their own dialect. They don't want to uh, use like Burmese language, for example, because they hate the Burmese language because in Myanmar, they feel that these ethnic minority groups are assimilated to the Burma majority group, and they don't have freedoms to use their own dialect in Myanmar to worship, and so they feel like that is problematic. So they just prefer using their own dialect and worshiping among their people with the same ethnic group. And so, in that case, the question here is, why should we also rethink Christian faith in monotheisms? So the way these Burmese migrant Christians understand their faith is definitely exclusive. And I asked them why it is exclusive, and they say because we are the chosen people. So this is really important for us to rethink our Christian faith. How should this monotheistic faith shifts the way we think about our identity in an exclusive way rather than in an exclusive way? Particularly, this happens um, um, to their relationship with their fellow Burma Buddhists. So in this country, here in the U.S., there are some majority Burma Buddhist people, but these ethnic minority Christians, not all of them are friendly to the Burma Buddhist people because they feel that they have experienced this persecution, discrimination back in Myanmar. So they just kind of like retaliations against them, and so these ethnic minority Christians are not quite friendly to these Burma Buddhist people. So the way they think their Christian faith is exclusive, drawing from these monotheistic traditions. So we are the chosen people. We are a new Israel, right? So we are not part of this Burma Buddhist. And so this kind of thing has been happening among these some ethnic minority Christians. So we really need to rethink about our Christian faith in an exclusive way. And the second is, I also believe that we also need to rethink our Christians belonging to Jesus Christ. When we belong to Jesus Christ, what does it mean? in terms of our relationship with the religious other as well as the ethnic other. That is also something important for us to think. And also among these Burmese migrant Christians, they, of course, not surprisingly, they really like Jesus' last commissions, right? So Jesus' last commissions is go into the nations and make disciples, things like that. That is Matthew chapter 28. But they often forget Jesus' last prayer. So what is Jesus' last prayer about? Jesus' last prayer, according to John chapter 17, verse 21, is to be one in his name, kind of like oneness in his name. So they tend to focus so much on Jesus' last commissions as the mission, but they often forget Jesus' last prayer. Unity, like oneness. How should we reinterpret Jesus' last prayer as the foundations for imagining oneness among these ethnic minority Christians? And similarly, Paul also talked about oneness in Jesus Christ in Galatians chapter 3, right? Verse 28. So how can we rethink this oneness, this unity among these different ethnic groups here in the United States? So to talk about this theoretically as well as practically, we need to think about this oneness and then otherness and relational identity. Although Chin might be slightly different from Kachin or maybe or Kachin, but we still need to rethink about the relational identity as we are one human being, one people from Myanmar. We still have some differences, but we still have a common identity of being humanity. So how can we rethink about this relational identity and reaching out to our friends as neighbors and friends? So that is something important for us to rethink about the future of these Burmese American Christians here in the US. And then lastly, this is really my deep feeling, the gap between academy and church. So this has been happening among this Burmese migrant Christian community here. Of course, not many people are academicians. Most of them are lay people. But I feel that there is a strong gap between this academy and church. And let me use one example here. Many of these migrant Christian churches don't want intellectual people to preach in their church. When I was a PhD student, and whenever I visited some these smaller Burmese migrant churches, and I asked them, can I preach and all these things, they always want to check what kind of seminary and institution I study. So they really want to see whether I am a conservative or I'm a liberal, because they are very cautious. They don't want to invite all the academic people to preach in their church because they really feel that this is they want to make this how to say, a big gap between the academy and the church. And then another example is that, last year when I finished my PhD, I really want to work as a pastor in the Burmese, a very small Burmese Christian community, especially where my hometown people are there. Two small churches rejected me. So I did not I did not have positions to be a pastor in that small church. But eventually, of course, I get a position here, and I came here. So I feel that they don't really welcome a really academic people. I'm maybe because they feel that academy is not really important for them. And also, I also feel that as I am academic persons, like many of us are also not engaging with them enough, I believe, because uh, we don't really listen to their voices, and we don't really get together and have the conversations in a healthy way. We are just making the gap between this academy and the church. So I think in the future, we really need to fill this gap, academy and this the grassroots Burmese community, so that I think we can really address some crucial issue among these communities. So let me stop here and we can open up for the questions.